Warning, incoming game over. Warning, incoming game over.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal, and hey, I'm not even muted. I'm here with Scott Matla from Eyes on the Prize. I'm talking with a Quebec accent now all of a sudden. Formerly of Locked On Canadiens. I haven't been able to talk to Scott in a long time, so I'm excited about this. What a game. Shout out to all of our friends in the chat here. Frederick Roulette, Keck Shows, Kay is here, MFM, Christina SV, Frederick Roulette. Oh no, I already said that. Gabrielle, Robert Rice, Matthew, and Denis all here. It's going to be a fun one today because, hey, the Montreal Canadiens have won back-to-back games. And Christina in the chat said that they haven't won back-to-back games since February of 2023, which feels longer ago than it was, I guess. Oh, no, wait, that's 2023, not 2024. That's a long time ago. So it's been a while. Okay, I was thinking last season, but yeah. I forgot because last season, we weren't able to do the show for the second half of the year. So I didn't have as much attention paid for like when things happen. I wasn't recording things in my nice tidy notebook. All right, so we're going to talk about a lot of stuff today. We're going to talk about how strong the top line was. Brendan Gallagher's great game, Arber Xhekaj, and that interesting penalty call in the first period that had the potential to mess up the game. I'm going to go through the defense pairs a little bit. And then we're going to talk about third periods and the kind of troubling situation for the Canadiens lately. But before we do that, I got to tell you all about Hyperdrive Hockey, because this is our new flagship show for the Game Over Network, and it is really damn good, frankly, already. Maxime Van Hoot, Daphne Malbouf, and Kev Laramie are together. They are building this show up every single week, every Tuesday and Friday on the Game Over Network Hub channel. You got to check it out. It's different than everything else that you've consumed in terms of hockey coverage, in terms of, especially on the English side of the pond. It's just totally different. It's three francophones broadcasting in English for the first time. They're getting better every single day at working with each other through English, because broadcasting in your second language, that's a chore, man. It's really, really tough. And the intelligence that these three have is incredible, along with the production value. So I highly suggest that you check it out. I'm really enjoying it, and it's been sparking creativity in me as well. I've got a video/article that is going to drop tomorrow, working off of something that Max and Daph put together on the third episode of Hyperdrive Hockey in the second week. We're now entering, I believe, the fourth week of what they've been doing. So there's lots of stuff to look forward to there. But we got to talk about this game, Mr. Matla. How are you feeling? The vibes in this one.
It's been a minute. It's completely different from that Rangers game where it was so bad that I shut the game off after it got to 4-0 in the first period and went and played Xbox instead. That going into this weekend that we talked about being in the mix and everything else, that they needed an answer of some kind. And had they won 1-1 on this weekend and played well, I think most people would have been like, cool, they broke that kind of losing skid here. To get both games and to play mostly well during all of that is a pretty big boost for a team that desperately needed bounces to go their way and just some games to, hey, we can actually do this. This is not luck and everything there. And they really kind of looked like the Canadiens team that we hoped we would see this year. A little bit sloppy, but when they're clicking, it's so much fun to watch.
There's a lot that's a work in progress, obviously, but you're right that there's the last couple of games, that time off seemed to do them a bit of help. I know it wasn't too long between Tuesday and Saturday, but at the beginning of the season, it seemed like that time off came at the perfect time. Right after that Rangers game where, to be charitable, they played really, really bad. And it seems like they've been able to kind of figure out some of the things that were going wrong and stem the tide slightly, even though they are totally destroyed with injuries right off the bat, as this is the norm for the Montreal Canadiens since 2021. You just can't get away from it.
No, and that's the thing too, is I think part of it is like Martin St. Louis coming on being like, why am I going to listen to people who don't want to offer me advice? Knowing your coach has your back in a certain way, and it's, it has to be helpful for a team that we know Marty's a good motivator. Like, we heard all those rumors about like one of the speeches that he gave in the locker room there, that it's like, okay, what did he say that the team came out and did this? And it's a learning experience. They took that Rangers game where they were bad, and they hung their potential Team Canada goalie out to dry, and I think they felt bad about that. And then they hung their backup goalie out to dry. They felt bad about that. And there's so many individual pieces on this team where things are working out really well that it's like, hey, let's get wins. This is not an individual thing. You look at what Cole Caulfield's doing this year. You look at what Lane Hutson's doing this year. You look at Nick Suzuki, who, went, slow start as always to the year, and then he's just really good again. Everything seems to be lining up. I'm not going to say this team's going to be good by any means, but it's not a chore to watch this team play when they play like they did this weekend. There's a lot to clean up on, but damn if they're not fun when they're playing like this.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something really awesome there with Suzuki that I really want to dig in on, because it's pretty obvious that until the last couple of games, and I know he started putting up points before that, Suzuki had not looked great to start the year. Now, he does seem like a slow starter and seems to just continually get better as the season goes on, and we're seeing that now. But if we're in a situation where Nick Suzuki playing poorly means that he has 11 points in 9 games, can we kind of put to rest the idea that he's not like a first line guy now? Because if this is Suzuki being kind of bad, I think he's gonna be all right. Like the amount of talent that he has, the amount of deception is really startling. Like, just even in games where he's not fully engaged, it only takes a split second for him to make an incredible impact, and that's what superstars do. Connor McDavid, really poor start to the season, point per game player anyway, right? That's what you expect from Connor McDavid. Poor start to the season for Nick Suzuki, over a point per game, not what I expected.
I was going to say, if Nick Suzuki has 11 points, he has more points than Mitch Marner, Timo Meier, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Tomas Hertl apparently, and the coward Mark Scheifele. And that's a bad start for Nick Suzuki. If that, like you said, if that's a bad start, I will take that bad start every single time. And we do this every single year. We did this with Max Pacioretty in the past too.
Yep.
Little adjustment, and then it clicks, and he's fine. It's the panic. I'm like, how are we not used to this by now? But it wouldn't be Montreal Canadiens fandom if we weren't panicking over the guy wearing the C on his chest if he doesn't score for 2 games in a row or something like that. So
yeah, and I do think like the worry about the top line was, it's small sample sizes, so you can never dig too deep into the beginning of the season. I think it's just it's a place where mistakes are made if you go in too hard on something that's happening in the beginning of the season. But at the same time, that top line with Slafkovsky to start the year was getting totally submarined. And I saw a lot of people blaming Slaf for it. I think it was more on Suzuki not filling the spots that he was supposed to. Basically, you just expect more from Nick. I think Slaf and Cole have actually been pretty strong to start the year. But now that Suzuki is starting to kick it into high gear, and he's found a spark with Dach as well, who has pretty darn good chemistry with Caulfield as well. It seemed to bring Dach out of his shell too. The last couple of games for him have been really different than the first stretch. He looks like a player who's ready to find his game again.
And the thing, it's Mike Johnson pointed this out, that like Dach got his first goal against St. Louis and then just transformed into a completely different player in this game. And it's the Kirby Dach that we've seen being that guy, that he is engaged, that he's making passes, he's being a menace around the net, he's not giving up the puck, he's using all that frame. And when Kirby Dach is clicking, and I don't know what they're going to do when Slafkovsky comes back into this lineup, that's decisions for Martin St. Louis to make, is you have options now. If you keep him as the winger on that top line and move Slafkovsky down to play with however you set up that second line, maybe that's for the best. Do you reunite the first line and let Kirby Dach now with this confidence flow on that second line there, and you have 2 really good centermen there with then Jake Evans, who's playing phenomenal hockey. I know Kay's listening to this, and I know she's going to love this. And then you have Oliver Kapanen, who, the minute he gets that first goal, I think a lot is going to fall into place for him too, because he does a lot of the right things in the offensive zone, but isn't getting rewarded for that. It gives you a lot of depth. Christian Dvorak is on this team. for whatever that may mean. But I love
It
seeing
doesn't go
Dach come
further
along.
than that.
No, I had my Bob McKenzie, Dylan McElrath moment here for a second where it's like I'm gonna say something about this person and that's where it's gonna stop. But seeing Dach come back to that, it creates so much more creativity in the Canadiens offense, and especially on the power play now, where he's a great guy in the bumper slot and he's making passes with authority. He's not second guessing. He's not double clutching at things. And it's a completely different guy than we saw a week ago where he'd get a pass and he's deer in headlights. It's just a completely different player. And for the Canadiens, that's a huge boon for you.
Yeah.
And we're a month, maybe a month and a half from the return of Patrick Laine potentially, that it's like, what does that do for this team when you have Kirby Dach firing on all cylinders to ease in someone like that into the lineup too? It's a huge boost.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those situations where you look at what the Canadiens have in the organization, or at least at the NHL level, and, Dach's a good playmaker. Suzuki's a good playmaker. Slavkovsky is mostly a good playmaker. He has a decent shot, just like Suzuki, but he doesn't use it as often as you want for like a goal scorer, right? And it makes sense with Caulfield in line. You're going to defer to him. But without Laine, there's no other natural goal scorer on the team that's proven that they can play top 6 minutes, right? Emil Heineman looks really strong. Like that shot, man, that guy can shoot the damn biscuit. But Laine adds a different dimension than most of the other players in the organization. It creates a little bit more danger for teams to deal with, another firing option to work with. And that's really exciting. But I think what I'm more excited about now is looking at how well Dach's played here. And, maybe he's not the center on that second line. Maybe a few years from now, we're looking at, hoping that Michael Hayes becomes that guy, right? Because he's got the hype, and I think he's playing really damn good in college so far. Every one of those highlights is like, okay, he's the guy who made it happen. Like every single play, it seems like it's him driving the bus, and that's what you want to see. Maybe it's like Hayes, Dach, Demidov on the second line or something like that. Like that is kind of nuts, And then you have a situation like the Canadiens, I think, are trying to build, where they have not a one line and a second line, but 1A, 1B, kind of like the Boston Bruins did with Bergeron, Krejci, right? And like either line could be the top line in a given game, whoever's hot, right?
It's you pick your poison, and it's like I haven't watched as much of Michael Hayes this year as I want to because their games are often the same time as the AHL.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I see a clip of it, it's I'm just gonna cut through here, I'm just gonna skate through here. Look at all the cool stuff I can do, and like you said, he's the catalyst for all of that. And it's the same thing with watching Demidov on a lot of plays now too. It's like I know, without hyperbole, I don't think I've been excited about a prospect as I have for Demidov. And the timeline for these guys getting here, that it's like they don't even have to say if Hage, does everything this year and goes, I'm ready for the pros. They don't have to rush this player here, but
You don't.
The synergy of all these different player archetypes coming together, including guys like Joshua Waugh down in the AHL, a guy like Owen Beck, Philip Machar having a really strong start to the season. You have so many different play styles that work so well together that when everything's clicking, it's just free-flowing, fun hockey to watch. And it's only going to get more exciting when some of the remnants of the previous regime age out, retire, move on, whatever that may be. And you've got all these guys who only know how to play one way, and that's, I'm going to make this look as cool as possible. You're going to hate your life afterwards when this is on a highlight reel, and just over and over. Is it always efficient? No, but excuse me for not wanting to be excited about the idea of that. Like Kirby Dach being, the veteran on a line with a bunch of guys like that, with like Hage and Demidov. And it's just, it makes you giddy.
It does, absolutely. And I put that on Twitter, and a few people were like, what about Laine? And I was like, well, I'm thinking like 2-3 years from now, right? Like I'm not talking about Michael Hayes joining the NHL and being a second line center at 19 years old. Like that's not where I'm looking. I'm looking at the cup window in the future. That's where my eyes are right now. I'm not too concerned about next season. And maybe Laine fits here and it's great and he signs a team-friendly deal and he's here the rest of his career. Who knows? But I think it's more likely that Dach stays past like 2-3 years than it is for Laine. I feel like that makes sense. But what you were talking about with, like the different player types the Canadiens have accumulated, somebody like Michael Hayes is not a guarantee, right? He's still a young kid in college hockey. We don't know what he could become. It looks like he could be really damn good, really intelligent. And I think in this specific market, if he takes the ice, like if he gets to that point, I think he's going to be like adored beyond words here. And it's going to just elevate him to a new level. But if you look at what the Canadiens have that is basically like guaranteed to make the NHL, and I'm not saying like superstars or anything, but like David Reinbacher is definitely going to make the NHL, right? He's going to be better than most of the defensemen, at least defensively, on the current Canadiens. I think Joshua Waugh is a virtual guarantee of being a longtime Montreal Canadien. But if you're looking at down the road and now you've got Demidov, Hayes, Dach as your second line, and there's no spot for Joshua Waugh, and Joshua Waugh is in your third line, good luck. Like imagine a third line of like Joshua Waugh and Owen Beck as like the two to build around. Have fun. Like that's just a nightmare to play against for any team. Have to deal with Caulfield / Suzuki. Then you got Demidov, Dach, Hayes, and then after that you still have to deal with guys as annoying as territorially dominant as Beck and Waugh. Like there's a lot of good coming down the pipeline here in Montreal.
And that goes all the way down into like the fourth line. Like there are guys that I love, like Xavier Simoneau, who is just a honey badger of a player. That it's like Michael Pezzetta. I don't know what that timeline for him in Montreal looks like at this point. And before long, you don't need to hold on to fourth liners because why not? You have someone you can ready-made and fill in with that. Jake Evans will eventually move on. Can you replace him with someone that's down there? Even like someone like Luke Tuck right now is having a really good start to his professional career, that are ready to move in here and they fit the role that they're looking for in a lot of these spots. Like I said, they're not going to be superstars, but they're guys that fit what they are, how they're constructing this roster to be right now. And I'm glad you mentioned David Reinbacher, because what I saw in the preseason before he got hurt, what I saw in Laval last year, he was the one I was most excited to watch on this Rocket team this year, because they were going to give him every minute possible.
Yep.
And he absolutely would have. And he did really well in that last year when they were pushing for a playoff spot, when they could have said, we're going to rely on the vets that we have. No, they put Reinbacher in there in a top 4 role and trusted him to do and make the most of it. And he did. He was fantastic for them. And it's a shame where he loses this year of development. And a lot of people are going to forget about that because of how good Adam Engstrom's been. Logan Mailloux making the jump temporarily, at least to the NHL this year. Long term, this season, I don't know if that's going to stick or not, but that's neither here nor there. He kind of gets forgotten in the shuffle here, especially when you have Lane Hudson doing Lane Hudson things. It's hard to not to not forget about some people sometimes.
Yeah, it is a little bit distracting watching Lane Hudson. Not that I'm complaining. I wish they could tear up the CBA just to sign him for 20 years. I would like him to never, ever leave this team and continue watching him every game for a very long time. But I do want to talk about the defense, but before we move on to that, let's just give a little shout out to Brendan Gallagher. I don't know if he was actually the first star of the game at the arena, but TSN gave him first star of the game for a shot hitting him and going in and breaking his stick and having the most perfect slow motion pass to Jake Evans that Evans just ripped through into the net. I love the finish on that. It was so like in your face. Like, I know you got to do that. You got to bury it. But it was almost like an empty net goal. And I just love how ready he was to bury that. He just saw it coming and nobody reacted. He's like, okay, I'm going to just wind up for a full minute and just bury it. And also Gallagher trolled Michkov, who, by the way, I thought was great tonight. I really enjoyed watching Michkov. Got a little bit too excited for himself at a few moments, tried to be a little bit too fancy, but going to be a really good player. But also goaded him into a penalty and didn't take a penalty at the same time, which is very un-Gallagher-like. So something went right for Brendan Gallagher today.
That pass to Jake Evans on the fourth Canadiens goal, which ended up being the game-winning goal in this because defensive lapses and whatever, is one of the funniest things I've ever seen, because watching when the Habs posted the highlight on Twitter, you're watching it kind of from an overhead behind angle, and you watch the pass going, and nobody on the Flyers is paying attention to anything. Jamie Drysdale is facing the wrong way. The goaltender, bless him, it's his first NHL game, is not tracking this because I don't know if he thinks Evans is going to shoot this or the puck's going to get there, but he does not move for this. It's like watching one of those nightmares where you're trying to run and you just can't, and this puck is just slowly drifting to Jake Evans to then just hammer on the goal line. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen, and it shouldn't be until you look at one of the other replays and you see Gallagher in the background with a broken stick in his hands, just throwing his hands up in the air and laughing because that shouldn't have worked. No. Any team paying the slightest bit of attention would have been like, oh, I'm just going to poke this away now, and Jake Evans is standing at the goal line flat-footed. He doesn't have a stick. It should be going the other direction, and it's not. It's in the back of your net. It's one of those things that everything worked out.
Yeah, it did.
For Gallagher tonight.
Do you think maybe the Flyers might be bad, Scott? Because they kind of seem like they might be bad.
I'm torn between the Flyers are entertaining because they seem to just score goals at will, but they cannot save a goal to save their lives this year. But I think the Flyers might be a teeny bit bad. This is not to say that the Canadiens are any good, but boy, getting beat 4-1, going down 4-1 to a team that played last night and then traveled and also hasn't been very good this year and cannot defend is probably not the look you want if you're the Flyers and you are really hoping to make some noise this year with Michkov coming in, a lot of their younger guys like kind of coming into their own. Like they've turned Rasmus Ristolainen into a quality NHL defenseman, and here you are, losing to the Montreal Canadiens this year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I do want to talk about the defense. I want to talk about Arber Xhekaj and the ridiculously absurd call in the first period there. But before I do, I got to tell everybody about LaRouche, which is a crowdfunding campaign that we're starting relatively shortly, probably mid to end of November when the campaign will actually be live. But we'll have a pre-register link available pretty shortly. So LaRouche is a Quebec-based crowdfunding campaign for small businesses and entrepreneurs in Quebec or across Canada, really, I guess. But based mostly in Quebec, we're going to have a page there, and we're looking to raise $15,000 to support our Hyperdrive hockey show to help pay the salaries of Daphne and Kev, and help support that show, and also to build out some of the French content that we're planning in the next year or so at the Game Over Network, because this is a Quebec-based company, and we do have to respect the place that we're living in, and we are broadcasting mostly in English, and we're using bringing francophones from the French side of broadcasting to the English side to kind of create a situation where people see some of the creativity and spark in Quebec media that gets lost through the language barrier. But at the same time, we're also looking to build some French content to not only engage our francophone viewers, but also to help people learn. One of the things that I want to do is work with Mark and Maxime and Daphne and Kev and others to give like short form French hockey terms for people to learn as the season goes on, like for myself as well, because I find it really fun and I'm starting to learn French myself. And I think we could all learn to be a little bit more educated and all that. But the big thing about LaRouche is we're going to have some prizes, some giveaways for people who donate to us, including one of the most fun ones, I think, is if you're a Montreal local, you can come and train with me and my boxing trainer. We're going to have a few of those packages available to pay for to come in and support us. And if we hit our fundraising goal of $15,000, we get access to a huge amount of government grants through the province of Quebec, through LaRouche's partnerships, and that can amount to up to $75,000, which would allow us to pay a lot of young creators to continue in this industry, which is not something that really exists in this industry in Canada right now. You talk to young people, and like I've talked to the people that we hired, and some of them coming straight out of journalism school or not quite finished yet and applying to hundreds of jobs over the summer, and it either gets kicked back in 20 minutes through an AI program or you never hear back. That's just the way that the landscape is for applying for jobs in this country. So we want to pay some people. We want to give people the opportunity to find their voice and become great sports analysts for you, with you, our amazing community. Kay is with us on Montreal. We've got Conor Tomalty as well, who's new. He's got a lot of experience working for, I believe, the Link at Concordia. But yeah, we've got amazing people here. We want to support them, and one of the ways that we are going to do that is by asking our amazing community to support us as well. All right, let's shift gears to the second period. Scott Matla, Arber Xhekaj gets the unsportsmanlike call, and I got to tell you, I talked with what's his name, Dave Jackson on Twitter tonight pretty extensively because I saw him going back and forth with Mark Dumont, and I kind of had to jump in as I am wont to do because I can't keep my mouth shut ever. And I really respect Dave because he's very patient and he takes the time to go through this stuff with hockey fans, and frankly, not enough. I don't want to even say accountability. There's not enough officials, either linesmen or refs, who are part of the media industry that can come in and talk about this stuff with people as equals and help explain situations that we're not on the ice for, right? Like, there are some things where fans are going to get it wrong and refs are going to get it right. However, this one, no. I'm sorry, Dave. I love going back and forth with you, man, but the explanations aren't jiving for me on this one. The idea that the officials decided that the hit on Dach was clean, so therefore Xhekaj was the one initiating all of the conflict. But to me, I don't know what you, Scott, but if you're going to say a hit is clean and then make a judgment call against another player and call a penalty when, like, I've never seen a situation where 3 people drop their gloves and only one person gets penalized, and it's the person who was double teamed. Like, shouldn't you talk with the other refs about that hit? Shouldn't you get that initial assumption right before you then build on that assumption? Like, if you're building a house and instead of wood framing or metal framing, you're like, what if I made it out of human shit? It's not going to be a nice house. No matter how many other good decisions or right decisions you make at the end of the day, you have to get the first one right. And they got it wrong. Dach got clipped in the head. Like, it was a headshot. Like, even if it was an accidental, it's a missed call. So saying that Xhekaj was the one instigating is insanity to me.
So my thing with this is that it's like, I don't know if they missed it, like, and they thought Dach was snapping his head back to avoid the hit and they didn't call that. I can buy and understand that you cannot see everything that happens on the ice at once. That in and of itself, I don't love that. And I think it was a hit to the head, intentional or not. I don't think Sean Couturier is that kind of player. I don't think he's ever been that kind of player. The aftermath is absolute insanity to me, that I've never heard Mike Johnson so incredulous on a broadcast before. And he was right, because Xhekaj goes up to Couturier. Arber Xhekaj, for all of the talk about him needing to rein in his rage and whatnot, did everything right.
Yep.
He goes up to Couturier, he puts a hand towards him and goes, hey, you can't do that, whatever that may be. And Couturier goes, okay. Couturier's gloves come off first.
Yep.
His gloves came off first, which means he's the one instigating this fight. Xhekaj's gloves are still on. Xhekaj's glove comes off. And then, like the friggin' Ultimate Warrior out of nowhere, Nick Seeler comes in and flying clotheslines Arber Xhekaj and gets nothing. If you're going to give Xhekaj and Couturier unsportsmanlike for starting a fight that didn't happen, that's fine. Giving Seeler nothing for being the most obvious third man in that's ever existed blows my mind. That he didn't make it subtle either. It's not like, oh, there was a scrum and Seeler came in and separated them. He jumps into the play with his gloves off like a friggin' superhero to defend his captain, which, for Sean Couturier's health, probably the right move. But that's a minimum 10-minute misconduct, and the refs were just like, we're going to just penalize Xhekaj only, when his gloves weren't even the first one off. Like I said, I've never heard Mike Johnson so just... I thought he was going to take off his headset and leave. Like, that's how upset he sounded in this game, and I thought he had every right to be, because he's a former player. He calls it like it is, and his mind, I think, shattered into a million pieces at that point. And I wish I had the full audio clip of it, because, oh my God, I was both laughing and infuriated at the same time. It's terrible. If that's the standard for officiating in this league, you're sunk. You're absolutely cooked. Like,
Yeah.
that's terrible.
And I think the thing is for me, like when a situation like this happens, mistakes are made. Humans make mistakes. I'm fine, but it's the circling of the wagons to defend it that annoys me about the NHL. Like, oh, well, there was a ref 4 feet away and Xhekaj must have said something. I don't care. I think you look at that situation and it's very obvious that Xhekaj never expected Sean Couturier to drop the gloves. It was don't do that. I'm going to rough somebody up if you don't you want to end the situation now, sure, drop the gloves. But I'm telling you, if you're going to play like this, we're going to play like this too. And Couturier drops the gloves and you can see Xhekaj's yeah, let's go. Let's do it. And then all of a sudden Sealer comes in from behind and tackles him. And, Dave was saying that from his point of view, Sealer was acting as a peacemaker. And I was like, okay. So if Arber Xhekaj is third man in to save Nick Suzuki from fighting someone, and he drops his gloves and tackles somebody from behind, who's calling him a peacemaker? This is 100% because it's Arber Xhekaj, the call goes this way. Because if it was David Savard, there's no chance the Habs come out of that down a man. There's no chance.
Yeah, I don't know how you call someone a peacemaker when I'm watching the clip right now. That it's there. If you're being a peacemaker, I don't know. I don't want to know what the troublemaker in that looks like in that world. That it's acting as a peacemaker is you kind of come in the middle and you box out and do whatever. You're not gloves off jumping into a brawl where a guy is already engaged with somebody else. That to me that reeks of shit. That's stinky. That's bad.
It's very stinky. And I don't want to, just to be clear, I don't want anybody, nobody should go after Dave Jackson. Like I said, he's incredibly patient with fans. And I disagree with him on this take. I've agreed with him on a lot of other takes. I've disagreed with him on some other takes. I think the notion that, because he replied on one, when I said to him, if this is David Savard, is the call made the same way? And he was like, it doesn't matter who the player is. I'm like, okay, come on, Dave. I understand you've got to go party line. But to say that there's not reputation calls in the NHL, please don't piss on my shoes and tell me it's raining. I'm not stupid. And this is what frustrates me, I think, most about talking to people who are in positions of power in general, in hockey, whatever, life. There's this natural tendency to talk down and assume that somebody will be like, oh yeah, they'll accept this bullshit. No. People in general are not actually that dumb. And I think we should treat people with a little bit more respect than expecting them to take that kind of answer as reality. We all know that reputation calls exist. Scott, you and I watched PK Subban coming into the NHL. We know reputation calls. We watched Brendan Gallagher lose 8 goals a year to, maybe 4 of them are justified to call back. That does exist. It's a human nature thing. So I don't get the backing yourself into a corner and denying that it's real. Just admit it and say sometimes mistakes are made. Sometimes they get it wrong, but they can't really get there because it's almost like they feel like it's betraying their fellow refs. They're just humans.
And the whole thing about it is that it's Arber Xhekaj did everything right. We talked, like I said earlier in this segment here, we talked so much about how, hey, rein in. We love that you are the toughest dude on the ice at any given time. But rein in and pick your spots. He approached this as amicably as Arber Xhekaj is able to do so in this. Yep. Especially after what happened to Dach in one of the other games, and especially in the preseason after the whole Ridley Gregg thing. He couldn't have approached this in a kinder way. In this entire game, all the Canadians pretty well kept their head on. Nick Delorier took a run at Michael Pezzetta, and I'm like, oh, he's going to be put on the IR after this. And Pezzetta looks at him and goes, and is telling him to calm down. This is a team that kept their head on there and still got jobbed on this. Thankfully, they didn't score on the power play, and almost immediately after that, Nick Suzuki opened it. Because had they gotten scored on there, I have a feeling this game would have gone a completely different way. That it's
well, what I put to Dave is does the NHL think about the outcomes of how they apply rules, right? Because you look at decisions that they make as a group of, whether it's the officials or Colin Campbell back in the day deciding that his kids can't get penalties, stuff like that. But it's like, if you're going to apply the rules in this way, what is the possible outcome of this? And what is the possible outcome of doing it a little bit differently, right? What is the possible outcome of taking both for 2 minutes? Coincidental minors. Just diffuse the situation a little bit. Because let's say Kirby Dach gets taken out by the concussion spotter after that hit, and then the Flyers score on the power play. It's a completely different game. The Habs bench is probably completely incensed and out of control, and crazy shit goes down. And we see that stuff happen in the NHL a lot because refs refuse to control the game and make the call that like fits the situation, taking the broader view. And I think sometimes they're either slaves to the rule book or slaves to like the standard interpretation of something, and also emotions, because we all have emotional reactions to everything, that they just like can't move past the stupid crap. And it's so frustrating. I don't want to spend too much more time on this because it was a good game, but
it's one of the funniest things that I've ever seen, because everyone was united in being like, even Flyers fans are like, I don't understand how this isn't a penalty.
The crowd was confused.
Because he jumped in like it's a wrestling match, that it's like, this would have been a disqualification in the WWE because the third man jumped in the ring and started attacking somebody. And boy, I hope, because I know the Situation Room puts out for like no goals and certain things. I would love like an actual from the War Room, Situation Room, whatever it is, show your work on this, because I want to know, did you just straight up blow the call on the ice where it's like not great, whatever? Or is there actually some really dumb logic you're going to try to peddle on me from the league on this, where I'm going to just call you on your bullshit on that?
And honestly, Scott, like for you and for the chat as well, you tell me how you feel. If refs had to do like a couple questions after the game for media, and a ref came out and said like, listen, I got that call wrong. Like we met, we thought we had it. It wasn't the right call. Sometimes that happens. For me, man, I have so much more respect for that ref instantaneously than the denial and defense.
They are the only league where the officials are not beholden to anything. VAR in the Premier League, like they will be like, this is the reasoning behind this, and this is what we were instructed to do. The officials will be asked on that. In the NBA, they are made to answer for any like calls. There's an officials report that comes out if they miss things from the league. Maybe not baseball. Baseball itself is its own mess of things, and automatic umpires can't get here quick enough. But I would love it if there's something egregious like this, that it's like, I just want to know, did you just miss the call, or what is your reasoning on this? Even if I don't agree with what you're saying, you have given me, the fact that you're going to own up and be like, this is what I'm sticking with. I don't have to agree with it, but I can respect that you're at least putting yourself out there for that and sticking by your potentially shoddy work, but you're not, I don't have to answer to you, I don't have to answer to anybody kind of thing.
Yeah, it's not a great situation. All right, I'm Andrew Berkshire. I'm here with Scott Matla. This is Game Over Montreal, and we're talking. Well, we're finished talking about Arber Xhekaj and the refs now. I feel like we've said our piece. We can move on and talk about, more fun stuff and maybe some less fun stuff as well. I want to talk about Logan Mailloux a little bit, Scott, because I know that you've covered the NHL much more extensively than I have in the last many years. So I do want to lean on you for a little bit of an AHL update, maybe in the third segment. But Mailloux, you've seen his progress in the American Hockey League. He got an assist tonight. He's got a goal in his call-up as well. The offensive production, I'm just not worried about. That is fine. But he looks to me to be way overwhelmed. Like, way overwhelmed. He's sunk every single pair he's been on so far in the NHL here. And I get that people are defensive about this prospect because they think that people have a bias against him because of past behaviors. Understandable. I'm going to come out and say right away, I'm not trying to say that Logan Mailloux is going to be a bad NHL player. But right now, in my opinion, he is not NHL ready. And not even close to it. Defensively, it is not fun. With and without the puck, his puck management in the defensive zone, oh, it's bad. It's so bad. In the first period alone tonight, he had 2 completely unforced errors that almost ended up in the back of the Canadiens' net. They were like the only chances the Flyers had in the entire first period. What do you think is the reasoning for him staying up right now? Because I understand the Canadiens have had some injuries, but he's very clearly not the best NHL option right now.
I think part of it is that there's not another option with the Rocket right now. Adam Engstrom's adjusting to his first full North American season after playing, pro hockey in Europe, and Adam Engstrom's been great. I don't think that William Trudeau moves the needle in the way that they are looking for with this, and Gustav Lindstrom is respectfully, deck chairs on the Titanic in that sort of situation.
He's
and
the
that
goose.
they're giving Mailloux basically sink or swim treatment right now. I think that they have all the faith that he will figure this out, because what I'm watching right now in the NHL is a lot of what I saw at the beginning of his AHL career last year, where he is trying to do so much that he's not thinking the play through. And I thought, pair him up with Arber Xhekaj. When they put those two together with the Rocket last year, everything clicked into place for both players and the team. They went on this crazy hot winning streak, and they were both point per game producers in the AHL. Everything was smart and calculated. In this, I don't know if it's the speed of the game or something else, but it's just he's not quite where he needs to be. Like you said, defensively, he's missing his reads. He's kind of getting turned in the wrong directions. And I think a lot of it is, whether it's Stefan Robida or Martin St. Louis or one of the development coaches, to be like, hey, take a minute and read the situation. You don't need to play hero all the time. You don't need to be chasing after players in the defensive zone. Take your space, take your zone, and cover where you need to be if there's people in that, and communicate on there. I'm not saying he's going to be a defensive whiz by any means. He wasn't on the Rocket last year. He's got all the offensive talent in the world that he can be a very good piece in that breakout. And if he's your first outlet out of the zone, he will carry that puck through the neutral zone and into the offensive zone. And then that allows you to get creative from there. Everything with this is that he is not making the reads that he needs to on this. And I know he's capable of doing that because I watched it last year. I watched this progression last year happen. And I think a lot of it is it's just a lot of nerves, and maybe right now he shouldn't be at this level right now, but their hands are tied. I imagine at this point, if David Reinbacher were healthy, it would have been David Reinbacher on 100%. The call-up instead of Logan Mailloux. Not because Mailloux didn't play well that first week of the season to earn this call-up. He absolutely did in those games. He looked great in the AHL. And he's falling into that weird flex zone of might be too good for this league, but clearly can't stick at this level quite yet. And it's a very difficult balance to make for a team who wants to improve, but wants to develop those guys for the future there. Joshua was very much in that spot too. And it's tough.
It is tough. And I'm glad you brought up the fact that his offense is so high level. His shot is ridiculous. He is very, very aggressive with the plays that he tries to set up, sometimes to his own detriment, but he's going to produce points. That's not an issue. And because of that, he doesn't have to be a great defensive player to be a full-time NHLer, right? He just needs to get a little bit closer to about average, right? Or just a little bit below average. That's all he really needs to do. So looking at his game and how it's developed so far, keeping in mind that the guy missed almost 2 years of development, that he's a low first-round pick that probably, if that year wasn't blown apart by COVID, he probably would have been a mid-second rounder based on the talent level and what he'd shown up to that point. We can be patient with this kid. He doesn't need to be in the NHL right now. And it's a situation that's not tenable for him to grow as a prospect, I think, because a guy like Lane Hudson, you can kind of throw to the wolves and not worry about the confidence taking a hit. He just oozes confidence, right? The skills are already NHL level. The reads are already NHL level. But Mailloux isn't there yet. And when you're putting him out there on this defense core that already struggles defensively more than most teams in the NHL, it's not a great fit right now. It's not a great development opportunity. And I think that's why I would like to see it switched up as soon as possible, just for the player and for the team. I think it's the best situation to not
Lane
at
Hudson's
the NHL
a good
level
point.
right now.
Lane Hutson's a good point to bring up there because there's something Caulfield's talked about this and smaller players have is that they've had to learn to play as a small player all the time and they've had to get better at reads and tracking and using their stick and everything else. Logan Mailloux is a bigger player in that he hasn't had to learn to take certain leverages because he's always been bigger or stronger than some of those opponents and learning, those little intricacies. You see it with Lane Hutson that it's hard to hit Lane Hutson. There are people, very good hitters in this league who have had him lined up and he's 2 steps ahead by the time they get there because he's played as a smaller player his entire life. His brother, when I talked to Cole Hutson at the Combine, said the same thing. I've always been a smaller player and I've had to learn to play like that. Cole Caulfield's had to learn how to do that. Zdeno Chara famously said he hated playing against Brian Giunta because Brian Giunta knew how to find the spots as around him that he can't defend. Logan Mailloux learning some of those things from Lane Hutson on, hey, if this guy's coming at this angle, this is my route now. Those are things you can teach through development, which the Canadiens are putting a big emphasis on. It's not an uncoachable thing. It's not an unteachable player. It's just getting that message through and learning to take that split second and make that read. And that goes for all these players. I'm not singling out just Logan Mailloux. 100%. This goes for Arber Xhekaj. This goes for Justin Barron. Hell, this goes for Mike Matheson and David Savard too. You're veterans, but you can still always learn on these things. The whole defense can learn a little bit from Lane Hutson. I don't expect all of them to be like pirouetting through defenses and juking out every player they come across, but if David Savard ever did that, it might be the funniest clip I've ever put on Twitter. So
I would not even be shocked, honestly. I want to see like a David Savard spinorama, and then he like cuts through the middle and does like a Lane Hutson shimmy shake and just snipes one. Just one time.
I want to see someone on the Habs just behind the net with Lane Hutson on the ice, just do the full head thing behind the net just to annoy somebody. I mean, David Savard, got into the Quebecois swearing match with Zachary Bolduc in the St. Louis game, which
fantastic.
For all intents and purposes, I think the closest we might get, but I'll take it. So,
yeah, I think the biggest thing with this defense core is without Gooley, there's just not much stability. Savard can do what he does, but it's very clear not in the role that they need him to be in right now. Matheson as well needs to drop down a bit. Hutson looks fantastic, and another phenomenal game from him tonight. I thought the way that he carries the play and creates opportunities is astonishing to me. But I've kind of already run out of platitudes about the kid, and I'm wondering how I'm going to keep talking about him years from now, other than just like, what can you say? He's incredible.
He's so close to getting that first goal, too. He's getting pucks in on net, and he's not a big, heavy shot guy, but he finds lanes. Like, Andrei Markov was never a big power guy. PK Subban or Sheldon Surrey were the power guys to Andrei Markov's finesse. And I watched that first shot that Lane Hutson rung off the inside of the crossbar, that he cuts in and finds an angle, he finds the gap, and he just wires it off there. And it's incredible to watch him work on that. And like you said, without Gooley, there isn't that like pillar defenseman. I think Mike Matheson is a very good defenseman, but I think he's a guy who's playing a lot in every situation, and that eats into him that he thinks he has to do so much more than he does. And that getting some of those minutes to some of the younger guys when they are, knock on wood, hopefully healthy soon, is the best thing for this defense. It's not going to be pretty. We knew there were going to be bumps in the road, especially with Hutson this year, that there's going to be bumps, but show me that step forward there. Show me what this team can be. Because like Gooley Hutson sounds great. Brian Bacher Hutson in the future sounds great. You can mix and match so many pieces here.
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity down the line, but right now it's hard to remember when everybody's expecting the team to take a step that this is still a learning process, and that step might be a small step. Especially with the injuries early on. But let's move on to the third periods a little bit, and maybe touch on Caden Primo and a quick AHL update a little bit. But before we do that, I got to tell you about our new pilot programming that we're going to pair with Game Over called Game On. So Game On has you covered. At the end of the game, we're here for you. We're here to build the community and talk about the Habs game. But who gets you ready for the game? Well, Game On is a new Monday through Friday, short form. Get dialed in on your favorite team. So Game On Montreal, hosted by Conor Tomalty, is basically under 10 minutes, usually under 7 minutes. You'll get everything you need to know about the Montreal Canadiens Monday through Friday. So it'll be posted on the Game Over Montreal podcast, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Go to thegameovernetwork.com/pages/Montreal. You can find the links all there. You can also find that link in the description of this video, along with links to our Patreon if you want to support us, and our Discord server if you want to hang out with us, because we always have fun, even when we're not broadcasting. And, that Game On programming, I think, is going to be huge once it catches on. We're kind of testing what we want to do with it right now and figuring out what the format's going to look like. But primarily, I think it's going to be perfect in podcast form. Basically, you can start your morning or start your afternoon, plug in, and get dialed into your Habs every single day, and then get ready for Game Over at the end of the game. It's a perfect pairing, in my opinion, and it's going to be really fun to see what our young people who we brought in can do with it over time. I know that Game On Ottawa, our buddy Mike Czar, is creating like a conspiracy theory board that he's adding to every day as the season goes on, which is really fun and like quirky. I like that kind of stuff. I like doing things differently than what we're expecting, because frankly, corporate media is boring. It's really boring. There's a reason why nobody watches the intermissions or anything. It sucks. It's not great. But we can do cool stuff here because there's no rules, because the boss is ourselves, and we can do whatever the heck we want as long as it's fun and cool for our audience. All right, let's talk about the third period, Scott. This is the second game, and I think 3? Yeah, the Rangers won, where I was really unimpressed with the level of urgency in the third period. I know they were nursing the 3-goal lead, and that's kind of the time on the second half of a back-to-back that you can let off the gas a little bit. But I've gotten used to this team pushing all the time under St. Louis, and I really didn't like the second and third period against the Rangers, because it seemed like they just gave up, and that's not a usual situation for this team. And tonight, the 2 goals, whatever, bang bang plays can happen, but the third period overall, I wasn't happy with. How did you feel about it, Scott?
I was talking in the Eyes on the Prize Slack about it because I looked up and there's like 9 minutes left. And I was like, this has all the energy of a funeral, which on a back-to-back where you're leading by 3 goals, you know what? Great. Don't do anything stupid. Don't get suspended. And, just keep it simple. Like, it's chips out to the neutral zone, skate it in deep. Maybe you get an opportunity. If not, just hold on to the puck and don't give a lifeline out to the Flyers, who, despite all of their flaws, have a lot of offensive talent that can make things happen in a flash. And then it was enough of a breakdown came down towards the end of the game that they got those 2 goals in 29 seconds. And it's like, they don't know how to always click back into gear as a younger team. Once they're coasting, it's very hard for them to get that motor moving again sometimes. And I was fine. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't great hockey. But on a back-to-back where you're nursing a 3-goal lead, just trying to get to the end of the game without anybody getting hurt, I didn't hate it, and then it all fell apart there a little bit. And that's on the defense for its simple little things, is clear your lines effectively. Chip it out to the neutral zone. Don't huck it towards an empty net when you're not at the red line, unless you're sure you're going to hit the net there. It's all little mental errors that led up to those 2 goals there, and it's a learning message for a team that, I think Jared Book put it this way, is that it's good that they learned a lesson without losing the game this time.
Yes.
You can learn a lesson here is that it's like, hey, you're up 3 goals. Like you said, keep going. You don't have to be so aggressive that you're giving up the odd man rushes the other way, but don't let yourself get complacent and put on the back foot out of nowhere, because it's going to be real hard to recover from that from a team whose pride you've wounded tonight and is not having the start they want. A wounded animal in a corner, and they will bite you if you give them the opportunity.
Yeah, Romelli brings up what worries them is a lot of the... Oh, sorry, I'm going to try that again. What worries them is a lot of the many goals allowed are right after a previous goal just happened. That's been a consistent thing with this team since that Stanley Cup final run in 2021. Basically, giving up goals in bunches. It's been a thing with this team. There's no denying it. They do it. whether they get shaken up a little bit, usually they recover, but it is definitely a consistent thing. I think it's probably to do with youth, just not realizing that momentum can get away from you really quickly, and maybe not recovering in time. But it is something to watch as the season goes on. I'd like to see some improvement there.
And that's, I think, part of it is, where do you find that level of aggression that it's like, we're going to keep pushing for things. We're not going to just give you, this cushion to, come back in this game here. It's fine-tuning the aggressiveness. And I know it's a back-to-back with travel. Guys and legs are tired. Like, I'm not saying I want to see what we saw in the first period with just crystal clear tape-to-tape passes, but watching them try to clear their lines at the end of the game, and I hate to single out a guy, but like watching someone like Christian Dvorak, who's, I don't know the purpose that he served out there, because he doesn't win the face-offs, and then he doesn't get the puck out. He looks like Josh Anderson at his worst. Yeah. And that was bad. Like, where Josh Anderson couldn't rim the puck out bad.
Yeah.
And you can't have him out there. I know you want another center for face-offs. If you have the opportunity, take the time out and then put Jake Evans out there. A center who's actually been playing really well and can play with pace and urgency and with a brain between his ears right now. It's all just mental things that aren't working out for them. And it's frustrating because it's the veterans that you expect better of that aren't getting it done.
Yep.
The second goal where David Savard is facing the wrong way when Travis Konechny cashes in there. He's facing the wrong way because his guy beat him around the net. Instead of turning and seeing which way the puck is going, he's got his back to the play, and he's not going to be quick enough to make a turn and a block on that. And you can't have Lane Hudson or Xhekaj or Mike Matheson, whomever, scrambling to cover for you all the time, because then you're just creating more issues there. It's all just little things that add up to one big thing, and they could have sealed that. I thought Lane Hudson probably should have taken the shot at the empty net there. Probably would have hit it, but hindsight's 20/20 on that.
He just didn't want his first NHL goal to be an empty netter, that's all.
Yeah, probably. Knowing him, probably. And he's probably also... He probably also thought, it's like, well, if I miss this and it's an icing, I'm still out here and I'm going to get on the bench. He's one of the guys that I think knows that he's young enough that he thinks, because hockey is stupid in this way, is that I'm going to be punished for a thing that Mike Matheson did 30 seconds later for no reason at all. So...
Yeah, I mean, I would assume at this point, Lane knows that there's probably not going to be much punishment, because what options do they have? I think it's very clear Marty's like, this is the guy. This is probably the number one defenseman now. He's going to overtake Matheson pretty quickly here. Might take a bit longer on the power play because, hey, credit to Matheson. Once again, dude produces points. He just does. Like, I know he's frustrating, but he does. And Dvorak, I think when we were younger, Scott, and we were both working at EOTP together, I think Dvorak, I would be writing columns about like every couple of days being like, why the hell is this guy on the roster at all? You lack a little bit more empathy. Now I almost feel bad talking about him, because everything for him has gone so disastrously wrong in Montreal, whether it's health or just like his effectiveness as a player, offensively, defensively. Like, he had face-offs, and now that's not going great either. Like, he's not supposed to be this guy. Like, he was not this guy in Arizona. It just hasn't worked here. So I feel really bad for him, but it sucks, man.
It all goes back to a game against the Wild where he was playing well, and then I want to say it was Jason Zucker came in with an elbow and just straight from behind in the base of his skull knocked him out cold. And
was it Zucker or Spurgeon?
It was whoever the current captain of the Wild did, so it might be Jared Spurgeon. I can't remember.
I remember that.
But right to the base of the skull, he was on the shelf with a concussion, and that basically threw off his entire season. Came back late in the year, and then he tore his pec, and it's just... the health hasn't been there, and then it's like, I don't know what his role is on this team. He was brought in to be both Philip Deneau and Jesperi Kotkaniemi in the same offseason, which was a disaster waiting to happen anyways. And not to relitigate all of that, it's just, I don't know what role he fits that Jake Evans and Oliver Kapanen don't already do better right now. And the emergence of Kapanen has made that even more obvious. And Owen Beck is already, he's not putting up a ton of points in the AHL, but he's the one getting double shifted when they had to play with 11 forwards the other night. He's the one on the penalty kill. He's getting the power play time. His line's the one that's being untouched by Pascal Vincent, even with Philip Machar out. Like, he is that guy. He's being groomed to be that stalwart pivot in the middle there. And I know Dvorak's contract is up relatively soon, but it's like, how long can you keep doing this before you realize you're not getting anything anymore now? It doesn't fit what this team is looking for right now. They showed it last year. They sent Yoel Armia to the AHL because he didn't fit. I don't know what's stopping them from doing that here. Oh no, he's going to get claimed. That's $4.5 million off the books. And if they're allegedly looking for a player with edge, cool, you have a ton more cap space to play with now. So
yeah, I don't think there's any chance whatsoever that he gets claimed. Not with the last few years that he's had. Even just from a health standpoint and a contract standpoint. Like I just can't see what team is going to do it. It doesn't make any sense. So they have options with Dvorak. They could do a conditioning thing in the AHL too, just see if they can get his confidence up a little bit. But everything is not working. All right, we are going to shift to the presser here in a second. But before we do, I'm going to erase Scott for a moment. He's still here, but you can't see him because we're showing off our new merch. All right, so we've got 3 amazing designs made by Brady Chalice from Game Over Winnipeg. We've got our Montreal skater. It's a bit of a retro design, very early 90s. We've got our Game Over established line, which is a little bit more streetwear. We've got awesome coffee mugs, and we've got our live and die by the goalie design or line, whatever you want to call it. Comes in hoodies or in t-shirts. There's a sale on the established line right now until the end of October. And yeah, it's really cool. Frankly, I'm really impressed with how things have come out already in our first couple attempts here at creating merch. And we're going to have a lot more stuff dropping in the next little while here. Maybe some holiday stuff as well, some specials. So check out our merch store. Go to thegameovernetwork.com/pages/Montreal to check out the Montreal stuff. It'll be right at the top, I believe, or maybe at the bottom. Or you can just go to gameovernetwork.com and there's merch right at the very top of the first page, right under the menu. It's really fun, and I think everybody's going to like this stuff because it's damn cool. It just is. All right, let's bring Scott back in and turn off this slideshow. Mr. Matla, there was a question here from Trizak further back in the chat that I think is going to be fun for us to go over. They ask, Tough Mudder, who wins, Scott Matla or Andrew Berkshire? And I'm going to right now remind everybody that I'm 5'7", and Scott is very much not.
As someone who hates running and is recovering from a chest cold, I think the people who win are anyone who is watching Andrew and I struggle through this. It's the people on the sidelines laughing at us who win in this.
Yes.
In that I get like 2 miles in, I'm like, nope, I'm done running today. Everything hurts and I hate this. I will give Andrew credit. He is likely in a lot better shape than I am, so I will happily defer to that in and of itself, that I do not think I'd be able to complete the Tough Mudder in my current spot, but in a year's time, maybe we revisit this, and maybe I've done one at that point, so.
Yeah, I don't know. I can say I've done, like, this summer, I ran my first 5K, just, like, on a whim. I'd never done it before, maybe in, like, high school, but even then, it was probably, like, wheezing with asthma. I've never been a runner. And I started walking a lot earlier this year, around the time that I got laid off by SDPN. Suddenly, I had more time to focus on myself. But like, my endurance is pretty damn good now. Like, I regularly do, like, my hour and 20-minute private session boxing, and then afterwards, I'll do a little bit more. Like, I can just keep going now. So, I don't know. Maybe I'd be pretty good at it. I'd never tried it. I'd love to try something like that just to, like, see where I am physically, because it's been such a, like, big change over the last year or so, but I have no clue if I'd actually be good at it or not. All right, let's talk to the chat a little bit here. I think there were some other good questions. But before we do, while I'm looking through here, I'm going to ask Scott a question myself, and that is, who has actually stood out to you so far this year in Laval?
I have 3, and this is because we're getting ready at Eyes on the Prize for our Player of the Month article, and I've been kind of thinking through this. Joshua has done exactly what you want him to do, and, like, I'm kind of shifting him off to the side because I expected him to be as good as he has been with the Rocket. Same with Alex Barré-Boulet, who has been phenomenal. He is one of the best AHL players of all time, and in the modern era here a little bit. But for me, Adam Engstrom has been incredible, and he's hit the ground running. That he and Mailloux were the top pairing for 2 games, and then they shuffled everything in because Mailloux got called up, and there's injuries and this and that. Adam Engstrom's been really, really impressive for me. He just effortlessly makes plays happen. He's a very good distributor. If there were third assists, he'd have a ton of them because he's often the one bringing the puck in, bringing it in deep, and getting the cycle moving around a little bit for different players. Jakub Dobeš is number 2. He's been phenomenal as a goalie. The numbers don't look great because the Rockets sometimes don't give up a ton of shots, so the ones that do go in bring that save percentage down. He's a .901 save percentage, but he's 3-0-0. Everything with him is composed. Last year when he started, it was chaotic, to put it lightly, in that a routine save became a 5-alarm fire around the crease there. Everything with Jakub Dobeš this year is so much more composed and locked in. He's an intense individual. He's extremely petty, and I appreciate that about him. Basically, he got insulted by the Belleville Senators last year and then just held that in the back of his mind that every time they were winning a game, he would just stand in front of a player and hold his stick up until the final horn went off if they were winning by enough. He's such a delightfully petty goalie, and I love that. And the other one is he's so funny. And then Luke Tuch has been up there. He's been a lot better than I thought he was going to be. I originally wrote his draft profile, and then they drafted him, followed him at Boston and at BU, and it's like I don't get it. There's a power forward guy, but the foot speed and stuff isn't there. And then whatever he's done in the last year and a half or so, he's up to pro speed. He's got the physicality. He's got a great shot. He's putting a lot of those things together, and I think that he's someone who's going to surprise a lot of people this year. He surprised me already. He scored 2 goals against Utica on Saturday night, game-winning goal there, short side snipe there. He's really impressed me a lot more than I thought, because I thought, he'll be a healthy scratch a bit here. He'll go. He's been involved in all the ways. He's on a line with Lucas Condata and Xavier Simoneau, and they make life a nuisance for people. And that's exactly what I want out of guys like that. They're not going to be superstars at the NHL level, but if that's a grind line at your NHL level, you could be doing a lot worse in terms of prospects.
Yeah, it's very true. Like, there's just a lot of things that are going right overall. Sorry. Au revoir, Dina. Thanks for checking in. I see some people have to check out. I understand. I've kept Scott already way too long. I feel bad about it, but I'm just having fun talking to my buddy. Dina asks, or not, she didn't ask. She said, apologize if I sound like a broken record. Yeah, no one sounds like a broken record. I love all you guys here. Honestly, it's so fun to be back talking to our amazing community. It makes my night, honestly. It's so awesome, and awesome to talk to Scott as well. Kay had asked Scott, what happened to Philip Michkov? Is he hurt long term? Is it just a little thing?
So that happened on a Friday night. I actually missed that Rocket game on Friday. We were hosting a Halloween party. He apparently just went for a hit along the boards, came out for another shift, tried it, was able to get off under his own power. And I think this is precautionary that if he's nursing a lower body injury, which is what they called it, they're not going to make him get on a bus, drive all the way to Utica to get back on a bus and drive all the way back to Quebec afterwards for a game on Wednesday. He and Laurent Dauphin are likely game time decisions, I would imagine. There wasn't any update after the game because they again had to get on the bus and drive all the way back another 9 hours because the overwhelming belief is that it's not a serious thing. It's just one of those little things that give it a rest, see where we're at next week. I'm hoping it's not too bad because he was playing phenomenal hockey. He was the leading rookie scorer before he went out injured. And that put, I think, a lot of people's fears to bed about how he would adjust to the AHL. His line with Davidson and Beck is phenomenal. All 3 of them work really well together, and Pascal Vincent just went, nope, I'm not touching anything else. Players come up, players come down. I'm not touching that line whatsoever. That stays as it is. Dude breaks his finger, we'll figure something else out in there, not touching the kid line whatsoever.
And I know I'm not supposed to circle back on stuff, but what you said about Luke Tuch, I forgot to say because I wanted to say it. I feel like that's the kind of thing you get when you invest in a development program with your team. Maybe a pick that wasn't the greatest, but had some good things going for them. You work with them, develop what they need to succeed, put them in a situation to succeed, and then they become a better player. I sure wish the Canadiens did that over the last 30 years, because maybe it wouldn't have been so lean, instead of just saying, hey, if you make it, you make it. And if you don't, well, you never deserved to in the first place. And yeah, Brendan Gallagher will make it. Arturi Lehkonen will make it. A lot of guys won't.
We were actually doing trivia back in the chat, and Daniel Carr came up, and Charles Houdon came up, and all these other things. And it's like, Jesus Christ, that there was a lot of, well, Sven Andrighetto was the next big thing for like 4 years until he was traded for Andreas Martinsen. Good for him. He's playing over in Switzerland right now, actually. So it's like he's playing against Nikita Sherbak. So like I could go down the failed list of guys I got my hopes up for. That with a development program and not Sylvain Lefebvre, unfortunately Stanley Cup winning coach Sylvain Lefebvre, really good defensive. I will wrestle with that in therapy another day. It's not the time on this show for me to go down that, but a development program that there are guys that maybe are not superstars, and they're not going to be, but they are being made into the best form of themselves.
Yeah,
and that is the most important. Are they going to be Canadiens players? Who knows? I don't know if William Trudeau will play a game for the Montreal Canadiens, but I know that he is going to come in and will have become a better player under this banner than he would have if it was just Marc Bergevin and that regime still at the helm, being like, well, good luck, figure it out, hope for the best. And what do you mean you didn't make it? All right, you're traded for whatever version of Dale Weiss is in the NHL now.
There you go. Dennis H. Or Denny, sorry. I miss Saku on Twitter, one of my favorite people. Oh no, it wasn't him. He said that he was just responding to it. It was Jean Simard. Says Toronto is dying for someone to take Liljegren off their hands. Could he be a fine stopgap to let Mailloux develop in Laval? I would love that. I don't know what Toronto would ask for Timothy Liljegren. You know, former relatively high first round pick. I believe he's like top 15, I think.
He was 17th overall pick in 2017. 25 years old, 6'1", right shot, 201 pounds.
And like the fact is, the guy gets results. I know the Leafs don't love him. He has some defensive issues, so maybe it's not the best fit for this team per se. But you look at what Toronto accomplishes with him on the ice versus without him on the ice, and he moves the needle in the proper direction most of the time, and they don't seem to like him. So, yeah. I'd be very interested to see if that works, because also, if he does work out and becomes quite good, and you stole him from the Leafs, that unequivocally kicks ass.
I promised myself I wasn't going to do a whole thing making fun of Toronto, but the Habs and Toronto are tied in the standings, and the Habs didn't win for 2 weeks, so that's very funny. I don't know what Toronto would want in there because their roster's full of just dudes that I don't know what they do.
David Savard.
At this point, yeah, they already have a guy who's slow and can't move anymore, or won't be able to move in a couple years in Chris Tanev. But
they'll be on Robidas Island within like 2 months.
I'm just looking at their defense right now, and it's Riley Ekman-Larsson, McCabe Tanev, Benoit Myers, Liljegren, Connor Timmins, and they love Connor Timmins and apparently Phil Myers more than Liljegren. And they gave Liljegren $3 million a year this offseason. None of that makes any sense to me right now. I think it would be a fun fit because if he's not great, cool. The Habs aren't trying to contend this year, but I'm wondering, they're not going to sneak him through waivers because I think that Utah will claim him, and I think that's where he's going to end up with both Jersey and other guy whose name I'm forgetting out like several months.
Yeah,
I think that there's something that's going to get worked out there in terms of draft picks for Timothy Liljegren. That just makes too much overall sense for that right now.
Yeah, our boy Ian Bover is going full HF boards and saying maybe the Leafs need a center, so maybe Mitch Marner's former teammate Christian Dvorak goes back.
We've moved on from do you want Kyle Dubas, do you want Ben Sherratt, to Kyle Dubas, do you want Joel Edmondson, to them signing Joel Edmondson anyway. So, actually, there's an open spot right now in Utah. I think that Liljegren's going to end up there. I think he'd be a very fun fit and put Mailloux back in the AHL. Not because I don't think he isn't capable of being an NHL player again, but that it's what he's needed to refine the parts of his game going forward there. Especially when Gouli comes back, whenever Justin Barron recovers from his head injury there. I think that is probably the right move to make there, just for the sake of development. And then after the deadline, you go, cool, we have that spot now. Let's try this again. So,
Yeah, 100%. All right, we're going to do one last question here. Elliot Friedman has mentioned, I think it was Thursday. No, it was yesterday. That the Canadiens might be looking for a forward with edge. And I saw some people mention Conor Garland as an option. I don't know why they thought Conor Garland was an option, because I don't think this team is looking to add more small forwards. Like, I like Conor Garland's game. He's a little agitator. He's a jerk. I love those players. But I don't know if that's what the Canadiens are after. Is there a forward with edge, Scott, around the league that might be available that you're looking at?
would you believe that I'm also one of the people that suggested Conor Garland because
Were you?
it's been mentioned before? Yes. I love Conor Garland's game, and when I think edge, I think the tiny guy who will, be feisty and take a helmet to the face from Nathan McKinnon. Outside of that, it's like I've been trying to rack my brain outside of Toronto being like, do you want David Kampf? And it's like, no, I don't want David Kampf.
Nope.
Not at all. Buffalo's like, there's a lot of teams that it's like, when people hear, hey, do you want a guy with bite or edge or whatever it might be, it's, hey, do you want this crappy fourth line forward? And the answer to that is no, because we could just keep playing Michael. Let me be nice. I don't want to call Michael Pezzetta a crappy player because I love Pezzetta. He's actually a development story from this Canadiens group to have made the NHL as long as he had. I can't think of a guy off the top of my head that's not going to be like, you're just taking this guy because, well, you have no choice in the matter for that. I'm just like slowly scrolling through like rosters and stuff here and trying to see if there's someone that makes sense. Like, Nicola Waugh is playing on the fourth line in Vegas right now. Is that someone that this team could look into potentially adding? And he's an upgrade on Christian Dvorak, so probably. But is that someone Vegas is going to move, knowing that they have a very solid center depth of Eichel, Hurdle, Carlson, and Waugh now? Probably not. So it's going to come out of nowhere because it's Kent Hughes, and it could be, hey, I made a superstar trade for a second-round pick because I'm Kent Hughes, and it might be. It won't be Ryan Reeves, but it'll be Michael Pezzetta from another team. Who knows at that point?
Yeah, and I'm going to say, I don't think that they're going to make a trade in the end for forward right now. I think if you're looking for a guy with edge, I know they chose to call up Kandata, I think, for this trip because they weren't sure about Anderson. But long term, even like 2-3 weeks from now, I expect Joshua Waugh to be up here. And I know that he's not like the typical forward with edge in terms of like he's not going to brain somebody out of nowhere. But in terms of being difficult to play against, he is damn difficult to play against, and he moves the needle every single night. So I think that's more likely than a trade. But also, I don't know, Kent Hughes just does stuff sometimes, and it seems to work out pretty well. And he has like these shots in the chamber that you don't expect. Like, I think we all thought that there was going to be some sort of big game hunting this year, but that Line trade it wasn't out of nowhere. There was rumors that the Canadiens were interested, but the details of that trade still blow my mind. Like, I love Jordan Harris. I think the Canadiens currently miss Jordan Harris. But long term, that was a trade that was probably always going to happen, like moving out Jordan Harris or another young defenseman that we all kind of like. Same with Jonathan Kovacevic. I saw some people in the comments saying, like, why did we trade Jonathan Kovacevic? It is a calculated risk. They wanted to make spots for guys like Lane Hudson, and it's bumpy right now, but it'll figure itself out. But man, Jordan Harris for Line and a second round pick? Like, you got and a second round pick? I understand the salary stuff, but damn, man. How does he do that stuff?
I do also expect, by the way, Joshua Waugh to be called up after the Rocket game on Wednesday. I think this was go back, rest. They didn't want and this sounds mean to Lucas Kandata, one of their skilled prospects doing a 3 games in 3 nights with travel on every single day. That's putting them in a position where they might get hurt just because they haven't had time to recuperate for a younger guy. And Lucas Kandata is, hey, we're going to put you in. You're probably going to play like 7 minutes on the fourth line, if even that kind of thing. And it's just a show of faith for the captain of the team there. If they didn't expect Anderson to play like at all, they probably would have changed it. I think Waugh will be up before too long there, especially depending on what happens with Slavkovsky as well. They're going to have to move things around. Raphael Harvey-Pinard isn't likely too far off too as he recovers, but I imagine he'll do a conditioning stint after missing the entire preseason and everything. The best trade they can do right now is just letting some of these guys get healthy. You don't need to make a panic trade. You're third place in the division, as funny as that sounds. Like, ride with what
Toronto?
you got. Tied with Toronto. They are behind just Florida and Tampa. Half of the everyone in the division is over 500, and it is currently Buffalo, the Habs, Toronto, and Ottawa, or Detroit, who are all 4-4-1 right now.
It's gonna be a fun year. Like, that's as much as the first few games were very chaotic and bad for the Canadiens, I think this record is about what I expect from them. Around 500, maybe not over. Maybe slightly under by the end of the season, but they're going to be a tough team to play against, I think, by the end of the year, especially if they can get healthy. All right, I'm going to let Scott go to bed, and I'm going to go to bed myself. Thank you all so much for joining us here. It's so fun to be with you all here. I'm just looking at the comments. King of the North, Recliner Sports, Jesse Reichbach, Ram Shestra, welcome. Dakota Joshua from the Canucks. I would love Dakota Joshua. Fantastic. Mark, Cheknita, Matt, Kay, Denise, Christina, Marco, Larrabee, all these awesome folks who have joined us here tonight, along with some people, Bernardo, who's making some off-color jokes in the chat about Scott and I continually talking about edgy and edging, which we can leave that for an After Dark episode, maybe a West Coast game. But thanks so much for joining us here. Make sure that you check out thegameovernetwork.com. Check out Scott's work at habseyesontheprize.com. And if you really like us, smash that like button. Hit subscribe on this channel. Hit subscribe on the Game Over Network channel as well. You can click on Game Over Montreal, scroll to the bottom, see our associated channels. They're all there. We're going to have a lot of fun this year. We've got a bunch more stuff that we're going to roll out that we haven't even told anybody about yet. It's going to be really damn fun. So we'll see you then. And I'm just going to give a little back pat to myself that we got through a show today with no technical issues. OBS worked for me. Let's do it, folks. We'll see you next one.